Begin doing what you want to do now. We are not living in eternity. Marcus Aurelius. Most people believe the future is something that happens asterisk to them. They react to events as they unfold, like leaves blown in the wind. They see themselves as victims of circumstance, buffeted by forces beyond their control. They think in terms of daily survival, immediate gratification, and short-term gains. This is not how winning is achieved. True success isn't about reacting. It's about constructing a future designed for victory. It's about understanding the pieces on the board, anticipating your opponent's moves, and setting a course to checkmate. The difference between those who drift through life and those who command their destiny lies in their approach to time. The average person lives in the present, consumed by fleeting emotions and immediate demands. The strategist, on the other hand, sees time as a resource, a battlefield to be conquered. They understand that every action taken today shapes the landscape of tomorrow. They don't just react to the present, they use it to build the future they desire. This requires discipline, foresight, and a willingness to delay gratification. The myth of overnight success is a dangerous delusion. It breeds impatience and leads to rash decisions. Real achievement is a slow, deliberate process of calculated moves and strategic positioning. It's about building a foundation of knowledge, skill, and resources that can withstand the inevitable storms of life. It's about understanding that every setback is an opportunity to learn and adapt. The path to mastery is paved with patience, persistence, and an unwavering focus on the long game. Consider the chess master. They don't just focus on the immediate threat. They analyze the entire board, anticipating their opponent's intentions several moves in advance. They sacrifice pawns to gain a strategic advantage, understanding that short-term losses can lead to long-term gains. They understand the subtle nuances of position, control, and timing. This is the mindset of the strategist, the architect of their own destiny. The calculated future is not a matter of luck, it's a matter of design. Emotional reactions are the enemy of strategic thinking. Fear, greed, and anger cloud judgment and lead to impulsive decisions. The strategist maintains a cool, detached perspective, analyzing situations with logic and reason. They understand that emotions are data points, not decision makers. They cultivate a sense of inner calm, allowing them to see the board clearly, even in the midst of chaos. This requires self-awareness, discipline, and a willingness to challenge one's own biases. The future is not predetermined. It is a canvas waiting to be painted. The question is, will you allow others to dictate your fate, or will you take control of the brush and create your own masterpiece? The calculated future is not a passive expectation. It's an active creation. It requires vision, planning, and a relentless commitment to execution. It's about understanding the rules of the game and using them to your advantage. It's about transforming dreams into reality, one calculated move at a time. Most people are trapped in a cycle of reaction, constantly responding to the demands of others. They are busy putting out fires, never taking the time to build a fireproof structure. The strategist breaks free from this cycle by prioritizing proactive planning over reactive responses. They anticipate potential problems and develop strategies to mitigate them. They understand that prevention is always better than cure. This requires foresight, discipline, and a willingness to invest in the future. The world is a complex and unpredictable place. There are no guarantees of success, but by embracing a strategic mindset, you can significantly increase your odds of achieving your goals. You can learn to see patterns where others see chaos. You can learn to anticipate trends before they become mainstream. You can learn to make calculated risks that pay off in the long run. The calculated future is not a guarantee of victory, but it is a guarantee of a more fulfilling and purposeful life. The key to mastering the calculated future lies in understanding the psychology that drives both your own behavior and the behavior of others. It's not enough to simply analyze external factors. You must also delve into the internal landscape of motivations, biases, and fears. This understanding allows you to predict reactions, influence decisions, and ultimately, shape the playing field to your advantage. Consider the power of framing. How you present information can drastically alter how it is perceived and acted upon. A strategic mind knows that the same data, presented in different ways, can elicit vastly different responses. This is not about manipulation in a negative sense, but about effectively communicating your vision and persuading others to see the world from your perspective. Furthermore, mastering your own emotions is paramount. Fear, greed, and ego are the enemies of rational decision-making. A calculated approach demands objectivity, and that requires the ability to detach yourself from the emotional whirlwind that can cloud your judgment. This is where mindfulness and self-awareness become crucial tools. By understanding your own triggers and biases, you can learn to recognize when your emotions are influencing your decisions and take steps to mitigate their impact. Practice observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment, allowing you to respond with intention rather than react out of impulse. The ability to delay gratification is another essential component of the strategic mindset. The lure of instant gratification can derail even the most well-laid plans. The calculated future requires a willingness to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term benefits. This is not about denying yourself pleasure altogether, but about prioritizing your long-term goals over immediate desires. It's about understanding that true success often requires patience, perseverance, and a willingness to endure temporary discomfort. Think of the investor who patiently holds onto a stock through market fluctuations, knowing that its true value will eventually be realized. Cognitive biases are inherent flaws in human reasoning that can lead to irrational decisions. Confirmation bias, for example, is the tendency to seek out information that confirms your existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. Anchoring bias is the tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information you receive, even if it's irrelevant. By understanding these biases, you can learn to recognize them in yourself and others and take steps to mitigate their influence. Challenge your own assumptions, seek out diverse perspectives, and be willing to change your mind when presented with new evidence. Finally, understand the power of perception. Reality is subjective. It is shaped by our individual experiences, beliefs, and biases. The ability to understand and influence the perceptions of others is a key strategic advantage. This requires empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. By understanding what motivates others, what they fear, and what they value, you can craft messages that resonate with them and influence their behavior. This is not about deception, but about effective communication and persuasion. The calculated future is not just about predicting events, it's about shaping them through a deep understanding of human psychology. Recognize that everyone operates with incomplete information. Your edge lies in gathering better information, interpreting it more accurately, and making decisions based on a clearer understanding of the landscape than your competitors. History offers countless examples of empires and armies that failed, not due to a lack of resources or manpower, but because of flawed strategic thinking. Consider the numerous military campaigns that began with overwhelming force, only to collapse due to poor planning, underestimation of the enemy, or an inability to adapt to changing circumstances. These failures are not simply matters of tactical errors on the battlefield. They are symptoms of deeper strategic deficiencies, a failure to understand the larger game being played. A powerful army, like a seemingly successful business, can be undone by a single, critical miscalculation if that miscalculation strikes at the heart of their strategic advantage. The Maginot Line, a massive and costly defensive fortification built by France before World War II, is a prime example of a strategic miscalculation rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of the evolving nature of warfare. It represented a massive investment in a static defense, designed to deter a direct assault on the Franco-German border. However, the Germans simply bypassed the Maginot Line by invading through Belgium, rendering the entire defensive system irrelevant. This wasn't just a tactical defeat. It was a strategic failure to anticipate the enemy's likely course of action and to adapt to new forms of warfare. The French High Command was fixated on the lessons of World War I, failing to recognize the potential for mobile armored warfare to circumvent fixed defenses. Their rigid thinking, their inability to adapt their strategy to the changing landscape, sealed their fate. Similarly, the Vietnam War provides another stark illustration of the dangers of strategic miscalculations. The United States possessed overwhelming military superiority, yet ultimately failed to achieve its objectives. This wasn't for a lack of courage or resources. The failure stemmed from a fundamental misunderstanding of the political and social dynamics of the conflict. The U.S. military approached the war as a conventional military engagement, focusing on attrition and body count. They failed to grasp the nature of the insurgency, the deep-seated nationalist sentiments driving the Vietnamese resistance, and the limitations of military power in achieving political objectives. The Viet Cong, despite being vastly outmatched in terms of firepower, were able to exploit the political vulnerabilities of the South Vietnamese government and wage a protracted guerrilla war that eroded American public support. The American strategic miscalculation was that they could win the war through military means alone, ignoring the crucial political and social dimensions of the conflict. They failed to understand that the ultimate victory depended on winning the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people, something they were fundamentally unable to do. The war became a quagmire, a drain on resources and morale, ultimately leading to American withdrawal. These historical examples highlight a critical lesson. Strategic success is not simply about possessing superior resources or firepower. It is about understanding the larger game, anticipating the moves of your opponents, and adapting your strategy to the changing environment. It requires a clear understanding of the underlying dynamics at play, including the political, social, and psychological factors that influence outcomes. A failure to grasp these complexities can lead to disastrous consequences, even for the most powerful empires or organizations. Strategic thinking demands a constant evaluation of assumptions, a willingness to challenge conventional wisdom, and an ability to learn from both successes and failures. It is a continuous process of adaptation and refinement, a never-ending quest to understand the forces shaping the future. Empires rise and fall not by chance, but by the quality of their strategic decisions. Every move, every decision, carries a consequence that ripples through time. A single misjudgment can unravel years of progress, while a well-calculated risk can alter the course of history. The human mind is the ultimate battleground. Every strategic advantage, every calculated move, originates within the complex neural networks that govern our thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Understanding the psychology of strategic thinking is therefore paramount to achieving success in any domain, whether it's business, politics, or even personal relationships. At its core, strategic thinking requires a detachment from immediate impulses and emotional reactions. It demands a cool, rational assessment of the situation, a clear-eyed understanding of the stakes, and a willingness to delay gratification in pursuit of a long-term goal. This is often easier said than done. Human beings are inherently emotional creatures, prone to cognitive biases and irrational decision-making. We are susceptible to fear, greed, and a host of other emotions that can cloud our judgment and lead us astray. Overcoming these inherent limitations requires a conscious effort to cultivate a more objective and analytical mindset. One of the key elements of strategic psychology is the ability to anticipate the reactions and motivations of others. This involves putting yourself in their shoes, understanding their values and beliefs, and predicting how they are likely to respond to different scenarios. This form of psychological projection is not about mind reading or divination. It is about employing a careful and systematic analysis of available information to make informed predictions about human behavior. This requires an understanding of basic psychological principles such as loss aversion, confirmation bias, and the power of social influence. Loss aversion, for example, refers to the tendency for people to feel the pain of a loss more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Strategic thinkers can leverage this bias by framing their proposals in a way that highlights the potential losses of inaction, rather than simply emphasizing the gains of action. Similarly, confirmation bias describes the tendency to seek out and interpret information that confirms pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring or downplaying contradictory evidence. Effective strategists are aware of this bias and actively seek out dissenting opinions and alternative perspectives to challenge their own assumptions. The psychology of risk is another crucial aspect of strategic thinking. All strategic decisions involve a degree of uncertainty and risk. The ability to accurately assess and manage risk is therefore essential for making sound judgments. This requires a willingness to confront the possibility of failure, to learn from mistakes, and to adapt one's strategy accordingly. It also involves understanding the difference between calculated risks and reckless gambles. A calculated risk is one where the potential rewards outweigh the potential costs, even if the probability of success is not guaranteed. A reckless gamble, on the other hand, is one where the potential costs are too high, regardless of the potential rewards. Furthermore, the ability to maintain composure under pressure is a critical psychological trait for strategic leaders. High-stakes situations can be incredibly stressful, and it is easy to succumb to panic or emotional reactivity. Effective leaders are able to remain calm and focused, even in the face of adversity. They can think clearly and rationally, make sound decisions, and inspire confidence in their followers. This requires a high degree of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and the ability to regulate one's own emotions. Ultimately, the psychology of strategic thinking is about cultivating a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation. The world is constantly changing, and the strategies that worked yesterday may not work today. Effective strategists are always learning from their experiences, seeking out new information, and refining their understanding of the game. They are not afraid to challenge their own assumptions or to admit when they are wrong. They are constantly striving to improve their skills and to become more effective thinkers and leaders. It is a journey of self-improvement and constant refinement, a perpetual quest to understand the ever-evolving landscape of human interaction and strategic advantage. Consider the business world, a landscape rife with calculated moves and ruthless decisions. Imagine a scenario: two companies, both vying for dominance in a rapidly expanding market. One company, let's call it Alpha, adopts a strategy of aggressive expansion, acquiring smaller competitors and saturating the market with their product. They prioritize short-term gains, focusing on immediate revenue and market share. Their leadership exudes confidence, bordering on arrogance, dismissing any potential threats. Their decisions are driven by instinct and gut feeling, with little regard for long-term planning or systemic analysis. The other company, Beta, takes a different approach. They invest heavily in research and development, focusing on innovation and creating a superior product. They carefully analyze the market, identifying underserved niches and anticipating future trends. Their leadership is cautious and deliberate, constantly evaluating risks and adapting their strategy as the landscape evolves. They understand that long-term success requires patience, discipline, and a willingness to sacrifice short-term gains for a sustainable competitive advantage. Beta's decisions are not based on gut feeling, but on meticulous data analysis and strategic foresight. Initially, Alpha appears to be winning. Their rapid expansion and aggressive marketing tactics result in impressive revenue growth and a dominant market share. Investors are impressed, and the company's stock price soars. Beta, on the other hand, struggles to keep pace. Their slower, more deliberate approach yields smaller short-term gains, and their stock price remains relatively flat. Many analysts criticize Beta's leadership for being too conservative and lacking the vision to capitalize on the market's potential. They believe Alpha's aggressive strategy is the key to long-term success. However, as time passes, the weaknesses of Alpha's strategy begin to emerge. Their rapid expansion leads to operational inefficiencies and quality control problems. Their focus on short-term gains results in a lack of investment in research and development, leaving them vulnerable to innovative competitors. Their arrogance blinds them to emerging threats and changing consumer preferences. Their reckless spending and acquisitions leave them vulnerable to market fluctuations. Beta, meanwhile, continues to execute their long-term strategy with discipline and precision. Their investment in research and development yields a stream of innovative products that capture the attention of consumers. Their careful market analysis allows them to anticipate future trends and adapt their strategy accordingly. Their cautious financial management provides them with a buffer against market volatility. They cultivate a culture of continuous learning and adaptation, constantly refining their understanding of the market and improving their operations. As the market matures, consumers become more discerning and demand higher quality products and services. Alpha's inferior product and poor customer service begin to take a toll on their reputation. Their market share erodes as consumers flock to Beta's superior offerings. Alpha's stock price plummets, and the company faces mounting financial difficulties. They are forced to lay off employees, close unprofitable locations, and scale back their operations. Beta, on the other hand, thrives in the evolving market. Their superior product, excellent customer service, and innovative marketing strategies solidify their position as the market leader. Their stock price soars, and they become a dominant force in the industry. Their long-term vision and strategic thinking have paid off handsomely. They have outmaneuvered Alpha, not through brute force, but through calculated planning, disciplined execution, and a deep understanding of the competitive landscape. This scenario illustrates the power of strategic thinking and long-term planning. Alpha's focus on short-term gains and reckless expansion ultimately led to their downfall, while Beta's patient, deliberate approach resulted in sustained success. The ability to anticipate future trends, adapt to changing market conditions, and maintain composure under pressure are critical for strategic leaders. It highlights the dangers of emotional reactivity and the importance of data-driven decision-making. The contrast between Alpha and Beta is not simply a matter of luck. It is a reflection of their underlying philosophies and strategic capabilities. Alpha's leadership was driven by ego and a desire for immediate gratification, while Beta's leadership was guided by reason, foresight, and a commitment to long-term value creation. This difference in mindset ultimately determined their fate. It demonstrates that true success in the long run is not about seizing opportunities, but about creating and nurturing a sustainable advantage. The downfall of Alpha is a common tragedy, a predictable consequence of a flawed understanding of the game. Many fall into the trap of believing that visible activity equates to progress, mistaking frenetic movement for strategic advance. They become obsessed with the immediate, chasing fleeting opportunities without considering the long-term implications. This is the illusion of control, the comforting belief that constant action will somehow guarantee a positive outcome. In reality, it often leads to wasted resources, misdirected effort, and ultimately failure. The problem is not a lack of effort, but a lack of direction, a failure to define clear objectives and develop a coherent strategy for achieving them. They react instead of anticipate, constantly putting out fires instead of preventing them. They are perpetually in a state of crisis management, never able to get ahead of the curve. This reactive approach is a sign of weakness, a vulnerability that competitors will exploit. They are predictable, their actions dictated by the immediate circumstances, their choices constrained by their lack of foresight. This predictability is their undoing, making them easy targets for those who have taken the time to understand the game and plan their moves accordingly. Their demise is not a surprise, but an inevitability, a consequence of their short-sightedness and their inability to see the bigger picture. They are so focused on the trees that they miss the forest, losing sight of the underlying dynamics that are shaping the landscape. Their attention is scattered, their resources thinly spread, their efforts ultimately ineffective. They are like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the waves at the mercy of the elements. They mistake activity for achievement, confusing the appearance of progress with actual progress. They become prisoners of their own short-term thinking, unable to escape the cycle of reactivity and crisis management. Their fate is sealed, a cautionary tale for those who believe that hard work alone is enough. The inability to detach oneself from the emotional roller coaster of the market is another fatal flaw. Fear and greed, the twin engines of irrationality, drive them to make impulsive decisions, buying high and selling low. They are swayed by the prevailing sentiment, swept up in the euphoria of booms and the despair of busts. They lack the discipline to stick to their strategy, abandoning their principles at the first sign of trouble. They are driven by emotion, not reason, their judgment clouded by anxiety and hope. This emotional vulnerability makes them easy prey for those who are able to maintain a cool head and think rationally. The market becomes their master, dictating their actions, controlling their fate. They are puppets on a string, dancing to the tune of fear and greed. They mistake noise for signal, reacting to every rumor and every headline, constantly adjusting their positions based on incomplete information. They are like gamblers chasing losses, throwing good money after bad, hoping to recoup their initial investment. Their emotions override their judgment, leading them to make increasingly reckless decisions. Their fate is predictable, a consequence of their emotional instability and their inability to control their impulses. They are consumed by the desire for quick riches, blinded by the allure of easy profits, unable to see the risks that lie ahead. They are like moths drawn to a flame, their desire ultimately leading to their destruction. Furthermore, a failure to understand the power of compounding is a critical error. They focus on immediate returns, neglecting the long-term benefits of consistent, disciplined investing. They are impatient, always seeking the quick buck, unwilling to wait for their investments to mature. They chase after high-yield opportunities, ignoring the inherent risks involved. They fail to appreciate the exponential growth that comes from reinvesting profits over time. They are like farmers who harvest their crops before they are ripe, sacrificing long-term yield for short-term gain. They lack the vision to see the potential of their investments, prematurely cashing out before they have had a chance to fully realize their value. They underestimate the power of time, failing to recognize that even small amounts invested consistently over long periods can generate substantial wealth. They are blinded by the present, unable to imagine the future value of their investments. They are like travelers who abandon their journey before reaching their destination, discouraged by the length of the road. Their impatience prevents them from achieving their long-term goals, condemning them to a life of financial insecurity. Finally, the arrogance of believing they are immune to failure is a common pitfall. They become complacent, overconfident in their abilities, ignoring the warning signs of impending trouble. They stop learning, believing they have already mastered the game. They become resistant to feedback, dismissing criticism as irrelevant. They surround themselves with sycophants, reinforcing their own biases and blinding themselves to reality. They are like generals who underestimate their enemies, failing to prepare for potential threats. They become arrogant and dismissive of those who challenge their authority. They fail to adapt to changing circumstances, clinging to outdated strategies and obsolete assumptions. Their arrogance blinds them to their own weaknesses, making them vulnerable to attack. They are like emperors who believe they are invincible until they are overthrown by their own hubris. Their downfall is swift and decisive, a consequence of their overconfidence and their failure to learn from their mistakes. Their fate serves as a reminder that even the most successful individuals are not immune to failure, and that humility and continuous learning are essential for long-term success. They thought they had conquered the market, but in reality, they had only conquered themselves. The calculated mind understands that short-term discomfort is often a necessary precursor to long-term gain. It embraces delayed gratification, recognizing that the greatest rewards are often those that require the most sustained effort. While others seek instant gratification,